Welcome to our April edition of Let's Get Growing. Very busy time in the landscape, so hey, let's get growing. Well, in April, there's still time to plant plenty of vegetables in the garden, and we've got a list up on the screen. I'm just going to mention a couple. Asparagus. Now, remember, those are roots that we're going to plant and let them grow for 3 years before we can start harvesting. So it's important that you use the right variety and get a variety that's adapted to Texas. Also in April, you can continue to plant container-grown trees and shrubs. Remember, you can't amend enough soil for a tree, so the soil that comes out of the hole is the soil that goes in. You can also sow seeds of annuals directly into the bed, and you're going to see a list of annuals on the screen that you can direct seed, and a package of seeds is much cheaper. So you spread them out, keep them wet for 7 to 14 days until you see that new growth, wait for the second set of leaves, and then begin to thin and transplant. Remember to handle by the leaves, because if you break the stem, they cannot recuperate. But if you break a leaf, they can grow a new leaf. In April, we're going to have to watch for a lot of things. All the aphids that are going to be on your new growth. Remember, a few are okay, but if you see too many, you can wash them off or spray them off with insecticidal soap. Watch for mildew on roses. If you see that, then we're going to have to put them on a regular fungal spray schedule. And in addition, snails and pill bugs will be on the foliage that's close to the ground, and you'll have to treat for those if you see them. Remember, they're doing their damage at night. You'll see the damage, but you won't see the insects. So treat for snails and pill bugs when you see that overnight damage. Also watch for squash bugs, loppers, and army worms. And army worms will be marching just like an army across the lawn. I've seen them take out a whole golf green in a couple of hours. So we'll want to treat those, and all you need to use is BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. Now, we have many things that we need to do in April in the landscape, and we're going to want to mulch all our newly planted areas. In addition, we're going to mow once a week because that's going to help us keep those weeds down. Hand water those newly planted areas and areas that dry out quickly, but use your sprinkler system as much as possible to get it a deep, thorough moisture down into the roots. And fertilize those newly planted areas after we see the new growth. And then we'll want to prune the climbing roses right after that spring bloom. We pruned all our bush roses back in February, but wait for the climbers to bloom and then cut them back. And remember to start weeding earlier. It's much easier to pull small weeds than it is to pull the larger ones. Plus, they're sucking needed nutrients and water from our desirable plants. And then mulch, 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 and you can reduce weeds and watering. Today, we're going to learn how to transplant orchids because everyone is scared to death of transplanting orchids. Usually, we would wait until after this is finished blooming, but as you can see, I have a hard time getting this baby to stand up, so we're going to repot it. And we start out with sphagnum moss. And as you can see, it's very, very dry and not very malleable right now. So we've pre-moistened, just like your soil would be a little bit wet when you're repotting. And the first thing that we're going to do is step up into a ceramic container because these like air on the roots. And you can see that they really aren't too worried about being root bound. The reason that I'm repotting this is so that it'll stand up better. You could see it'll continue to put out roots no matter where it is. So if you're going to grow orchids, try to pick up the one with the wider leaves, and these will repeat for you. So what we're going to do is start out with our pre-moistened sphagnum moss. Put some of the pre-moistened sphagnum moss into the bottom of the container. And you see how I have this tag? Never ever lose these tags with the names on them so you'll know what they are when they do not have blooms. And now we're going to remove the container. And if it doesn't come out when you first pull on it, just squeeze around and pull gently. And you can see, look how beautiful a root system it is. And this is just a fungus, and that means that it's growing well, because this is actually a fungus. Sphagnum moss grows in bogs. It's a moss, and then fungus is a moss, so we're putting it in a compatible potting medium. Now, I've got a little bit too much, so we just remove some. And return it to the container. And you'll notice that I'm not going to a much larger container, and I'm taking the moss and just kind of feeding it in between the existing root system and the container. And you just have to make sure that you're getting it in to the bottom so that we're filling those cracks and crevices. And another thing that can help you is just a standard little pen or pencil, and that can help you push it down in between the root and the container. So start out with your fingers and then compress, and you just kind of mash it in. It'll roll, and just continue turning. They're not as delicate as you think, but as you notice, I'm not really endangering or hurting the root system. And then at the very end, I'm going to go around and make sure that I've filled in around the edge. And you can see that I'm filling the little crack completely. And we're above the edge of the container, but this is what we want, so that we're making a breathable container. As you can see, we've successfully repotted this orchid, but I wanted to talk to you about staking the orchid. As you can see, we use these little orchid clips, and you can also use the little hair clips that you buy and use in your hair. And you just take them and carefully hook it to the stake, and it'll keep it nice and straight. As you can see, it's not going to fall over on me. Well, that's another edition of Let's Get Growing, and we want to thank the Summit Garden Club for inviting us into the conservatory, and you too can have a beautiful garden. So let's get growing.